And joining us at this time is a gentleman. He's out there in the U.S. and he's always putting his 2 cents in, adding his voice to what's happening here. He's a son of the soil, and he is always outspoken. Let me say a pleasant evening to Professor Anselm, Wallstreet, Bourne. Good evening, sir.
Mikee K, pleasant good afternoon to you, and a splendid good afternoon to all the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and those locked on and listening to the Observer with Mikee K.
Thank you. You may want to talk a little louder. I don't know this soft-spoken Billy D. Williams demeanor that you're coming with. We want to hear.
Like you want me to scream on? You want me to scream?
We are in a campaign, so we like to hear the noise. Hey, let me say again, thank you so much for taking time out on this Sunday to link with us. You know, one of the things that we're hearing, of course, is that black Trinidadians are being used to send a message of disharmony.
Mikey, can you say that again?
We are heard from the Prime Minister that black Trinidadians are being used to send a message of disunity and a message of race and what have you. And I think you weighed in on that.
Yes.
But what's interesting is that, how do I put this? I mean, coming from a gentleman who has been there side by side with his cabinet colleagues for all of these years, and I've heard all of these comments, some bitter, venomous comments that have been spewed by his former boss, well, his boss still, I guess, the former Prime Minister, and others. And there was a deafening silence. What are we witnessing?
You know, Mikey K, first of all, let me say to Prime Minister Stuart Young, you are wrong. The UNC is not using black Trinidadians. The PNM is failing them. Let me repeat that. Let me say to Prime Minister Stuart Young, you are wrong. The UNC is not using black Trinidadians. The PNM is failing them. And Mikey K, let me say this, Prime Minister Young, when he was just Gary Sobers, stood on a platform and he called black people potong and termites. That's not my words. That's his words. And he has never apologized to the black PNM supporters for calling him that. You know, in addition to that, Mikey K, you know I like statistics, right? You know I love my statistics. Right? So in a survey in 2021, 61% of black Trinidadians stated they will vote for the PNM, while 54% of Indo-Trinidadians stated they will vote for the UNC. However, the PNM have 26.3% of them living below the poverty line. And Mikey K, I have said this over and over. Under Kamala Persad-Bissessor, from 2010 to 2015, she reduced the amount of black people living below the poverty line from 19.8% to 17.3%. And under Prime Minister Rowley, he increased it from 17.3% to 26.3%, an over 50% increase. So when I hear Prime Minister Young coming and talking about the UNC are black and the UNC using black, the statistic doesn't point that out. The most dilapidated communities in Trinidad and Tobago are communities who have never forsaken the PNM, including Mova, Laventel East and Laventel West. So I think Prime Minister Young had to come again with those red tricks. People not falling for that. And come April 28th, yellow is the code.
Yeah, but you know, Mr. Lamont, what's interesting here, we were told a couple of years ago by Dr. Rowley that black Trinbagonians have not reached the level. He was disappointed that we were not better off than we are today, that we did not financially or socially evolve into having that sort of status. And then one has to ask the questions, did he expect that to happen because of PNM policies? And if so, what PNM policy that has ever been presented to the people, I should say black people of this country, that has helped them to elevate their lives and the lives of the people in their community?
Well, Mikee K, we have to go back to the famous words of former Prime Minister Rowley. He have no problems making the rich richer in order for them to create opportunities for the poor. And Mikee K, I want to say this here, and I ask this question to the PNM supporters, especially the black PNM supporters, and I make no qualms about saying this, Mikee K, the poor, black, disadvantaged PNM supporters. I am trying to find one socio-economic statistic in the last 10 years under the PNM, where black people are at the top of the socio-economic ladder. Just one, Mikee K. And they've been having a very hard time to find one. So when you look at the policies of the PNM, the policies of the PNM is not to support those people who put them in power when they go to the voting booth. Their policies that support the finances. You know, so it is about time that the black supporters of the PNM ask them, where is our economic development? Where is our economic empowerment? Where is our economic inclusion and access to capital for black people and black businesses under this PNM government? And I will say this, Mikee K. Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, as leader of the United National Congress, have shown that when she's in power, when she was in power between 2010 and 2015, Mikee K, black people prospered. And let me say this, people get upset when I say this. It appears to me, Mikee K, that many of the black PNM supporters had rather suffer under a black prime minister than to prosper under an Indian prime minister. And I have no qualms about saying that because the statistics point that out. Let me say one other thing, Mikee K. If you look at the SEA, under Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, the black people that was scoring under 30% was very low. Once the PNM came into power, that number increased significantly in that there are more black students scoring under 30% in the SEA under the PNM government than under Kamala Prasad-Bissessar run government.
Wow.
Mikee K, like I gave some statistics there where you get quiet.
But these are facts. These are facts.
And that's what it is.
But again,
it's fact, not fiction.
Again, you get this impression that because it's this season, we start hearing the race baiting and whatever, and I think we've come accustomed to that element in our local politics. But the issue here is trying to use a group of individuals that you have exploited, that you have socially, politically abused, that you have always sidelined, to make them a priority now in order to get political traction really and truly says quite a lot. I was talking, of course, I had on a veteran journalist, Ken Ali, just now, and we both agreed that, many of the people who would have been supporting or died, many of the people that you would hear saying, I'm going to stay PNM till I'm dead or what have you, they're gone. You have young people now, free thinkers, who are able to say, listen, I have seen the generation before me suffer. They have not benefited. And I believe that it is deserving that I have a better life. I want to live better. And it seems as though the PNM is not prepared for that. Is it that there's an issue that when it is that the people who have been enslaved and the people who have been exploited stand up and demand what should rightfully be theirs, that's where the problem begins?
Yes. And what the PNM is very good at, the PNM is very good. Mikee K, I have been in Balize House, and there's a propaganda room in Balize House. And you may not have never been to Balize. I've been to Balize House. There was a propaganda room. And when you see they go to a machine, and that machine they will spit out facts, they will spit out propaganda. So when the PNM start with the propaganda machine, most of the PNM supporters, especially black PNM supporters, they believe whatever the PNM tells them. And that is where they have to now think critically. Because they're not thinking critically, And I think I give a quick example. Piccadilly Government School, St. Philip's Roman Catholic School, in Lavantil and environs. Piccadilly is right at the bottom of Lavantil Road. Those two schools, Mikee K, have been closed for a long time. And this PNM government, this wicked, evil PNM government, that's what they are. This wicked, evil government would not even think about reopening those schools so people can go, black people can go to neighborhood schools rather than having to traverse miles away and costing them money. So that is the reason why I can say, Mikee K, that under a UNC party, black people will prosper. I know some people might be, well, I know Wallstreet saying that, but the facts are there, Mikee K. It is there. You know, and it is sad. It is sad. And then now, Mikee K, we have had a minority hosted on the majority in order to run the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And it's sad that currently we have a prime minister that's elected, not elected. And how long can we go on this way? Explain us.
Let me ask you about that point, and I want you to expand on that point. I mean, looking on, when one sets out to accomplish, you know, that is to sit in the big chair, they understand the challenges, they understand the sacrifices, they know first and foremost, they have to pay their dues. They understand that. You have to pay your dues. Are we now seeing a backlash from the fact that many people internally inside the party are saying, listen, where did you come from? You were just simply thrown at us, and here it is now, you did not pay your dues, you did not come through the rank and file. Is it now creating such a problem that many are simply walking away from the campaign and saying, listen, let the chips fall where they may?
Correct, exactly. And people have said, and I could call them names, like Penelope Beckles, have toiled in the vineyard for years. She was a UN ambassador. You know, Dr. Amy Brown, Minister of Foreign Affairs, he was an ambassador, have toiled in the vineyard for many years. You can even call the fellow from La Orqueta Talpa or Foster Cummins, you know, who have toiled in the vineyard for many years. And all of a sudden, we have a young come lately, just so hoisted on the PNM people, and they're upset. They are very upset. But you know, when they go behind closed doors, it look like they're unified. But a little red bully whisper in my ears, Mikee K, my right ear, not my left ear, because most of the PNM supporters have a red ear plug with their left ear. So I'm whispering in my right ear that there's problems within the PNM as far as that young man is concerned. You know, and they really don't want him. But since the former prime minister decided to hoist him on them, you know, they had to take, but Mikee K, you know, I don't understand this. I don't know if this is the first time in politics in Trinidad and Tobago. The PNM have a prime minister that's different from the PNM political leader.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not just asking questions, you know what I mean? You know, so it appears that the PNM is in big trouble. And I got to say this, Mikee K. I've seen all, Mikee K, you have been splendiferous on the platform as well. I mean, they are a little prop. But Mr. Kamla Prasad Visesa have laid out the policies, the manifestos, excellent, telling you what the next government of Trinidad and Tobago is going to do for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Yet, we haven't seen even a half manifesto from the PNM government.
And when you take in consideration the fact that there's so many people now who are coming to the realization that there's nothing that is being offered by the PNM, I have to ask you that question. I need to ask you, when did you realize, take us back, I know it was after 2015, you were demanding change, you were standing up for change, and what have you.
Yes.
At what point did you say to yourself and realize to yourself, listen, something is wrong here, and that you had to go and look at the statistics, you had to look at the figures, you had to look at and make the comparison as to what was being offered, what was being done, compared to what had been accomplished by the former administration led by Kamla Prasad Visesa. Give us an idea of what, you know, how you went about getting to the fact that, listen, something isn't right here.
Mikee K, I started to put on my critical thinking cap. And I said to myself, wait now, you know, in 2015, under Kamla Prasad Visesa, she gave David Mohammed that piece of land in Prisgalan the day before the election. I said, boy, that's a real woman who really thoughtful, boy. She didn't know what she was going to win. She didn't know what she was going to lose. but Dr. David Mohammed got a piece of land where they currently have the Kwame Tourist Center. And then I started to compare to the PNM. Under the PNM, we requested the former Workers' Bank building for the Lavantel to Wallstreet Empowerment Center. And Prime Minister Rowley, he was the one that got the proposal, and he was the one that put it in the dustbin. No, he actually put it in the lavas. And they rather mash down the building, mash it down like chili baby, Mikee K, than give it to the Lavantel Wallstreet Empowerment Center for those poor black disadvantaged youths. Secondly, I started to look at the statistics under the UNC, compare and contrast, as far as poor black people living under the poverty line. And when I see Mrs. Kamala Prasad reduce it from 19.8% to 17.3%, and under Prime Minister Rowley in 10 years, he increased it from 17.3% to 26.3%. I said, nah, the UNC really care about black people. And then when I look at education, and I see how the students, the black students, prosper under UNC government and failing miserable under PNM government. And lastly, Mikee K, when I look at the crime, if you take the PNM and under Prime Minister Rowley and they went to the Crime Olympics, they get gold, silver, and bronze. 3 of the highest murders in the history of Trinidad and Tobago was under a Prime Minister Rowley-led PNM government. And I say to myself, I say, you know what? I cannot sit down there and support that kind of thing because the PNM does not have black people's interests at hand, especially the black supporters. As Malcolm X said, Mikee K, all the PNM want to do to them is have them suffer peacefully. And that is sad.
And I know that it wasn't easy for you to actually make these statements publicly. I know there was quite a lot of back.
No, Mikee K, no, don't try to give me out. It was easy. Here's why it was easy, Mikee K, because when I see my own black people suffering, and I compare what was done under Kamala Prasad professor, it was easy for me to say yellow is the code. Very easy. You know what I mean? Don't try to get my out, Mikee K. It's okay, I know you tried that.
But you have been a thorn in the side of many of their talk show hosts, many of the people who have been spewing their propaganda on the airwaves. You've been the fact checker to many of the comments that have been made. I mean, this sense of commitment and dedication, really and truly, you have to be motivated beyond just looking at it and saying something is wrong. There has to be something that keeps you going, energized on a daily basis to say, listen, I'm calling them out because that statement isn't right. I'm calling them out because that is a blatant lie. There has to be more to it, Professor LeBon.
Yeah, Mikee K, let me tell you. All right, you are going deep down now.
Go deep.
Mikee K, I grew up in Schumacher, Lavantel, building 1 apartment, 2-1. The first planning in Lavantel. When I grew up, Mikee K, I used to say we were so poor, the job people are. We were just poor. And when I see in 2025 what my community looked like, I left Trinidad 47 years ago, Mikee K, 47 years, and Mikee K, it is 45 times worse than when I left it. And most of those years under a PNM government and a PNM stronghold, Lavantel West have never voted for any other party other than the PNM. And secondly, Mikee K, I see a video about Rosedale Lavantel and a young lady talking about 5 generations. I said, nah. I said, oh God, boy, how could a party be so wicked and evil to people who keep putting them in power over and over? And I hope, Mikee K, and I believe that many of these people are finally woken up and going to give the UNC an opportunity in order to make lives better for them from an economic and social perspective as well.
Thank you so much. Any closing comments? Go right ahead.
Well, Mikee K, let me just say to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, I want you all to go look at the statistics when Kamala Prasad Besessa was in power between 2010-2015 to 2015 to 2025. Compare and contrast, especially those people who look like you and I, Mikee K, and show that the UNC, under a UNC government led by Kamala Prasad, you as a black person will prosper in Trinidad and Tobago, and you wouldn't suffer like how the PNM have you suffering. Mikee K, you have a splendiferous, tremendiferous, marvelous, fantastic, spectacular rest of the day.
Same to you, and do have a good one. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.